Good morning and welcome to Shattering Myths, a program devoted to those of you who know that there's something wrong with the political, religious, media, military, and economic institutions which govern and influence our world. We realize that they are the problem and therefore they cannot be the solution. Our mission is to look behind the headlines, to know who is perpetrating these tragedies that are besieging our planet, because based upon the plague of adverse political, religious, academic, military, media, and economic influences, we have at very most 15 years until all hell is unleashed and we experience a complete collapse of the world as we know it. In our second hour, therefore, we're going to engage God on His terms, through evidence and reason, since His guidance regarding participation in His covenant provides our only reliable escape. Our phone number, if you'd like to participate in this discussion, is 877-300-7645. This morning I'm back in California. Took a roadie across the country, spent Saturday, Sunday, and for those who were listening, found that we played an archive of the show yesterday, driving across the nation. A couple of observations. One is that until you get to Nevada and California, the northern route I took through Denver and the Rocky Mountains is less of a police state than experienced on the southern route. So if you have an allergy to authority, which I do, I highly recommend the northern route. This trip, the most annoying aspect was people's inability to exercise good judgment. If you're driving on interstate, there's two lanes. You're in the right lane driving, and what you find is almost universally somebody that comes up on a slower vehicle decides without considering the approaching speed of somebody in the passing lane, pulls into the left lane, and they usually slow down. And they take forever to pass the car that was in the right lane with absolutely no recognition or factoring of the closing speed with the approaching car. It was almost universal. I must have experienced that several hundred times, maybe 1,000 times over the course of this trip. And it's I can only assume that it's a direct result of the dumbing down of America. Of our ability to process things that are fairly complex, like closing speeds, in our minds, and to be aware of one's surroundings, to give a hoot about others that are sharing a similar space. But other than that, the trip was reasonably uneventful, except as I made my way into the California area yesterday, I kept on hearing about Jeff Bezos' comments on 60 Minutes. And since I once took a company public, started and created a company specifically designed to sell product in the online world, I wanted to speak about Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder's comments on 60 Minutes. He declared that within the next 5 years that Amazon would be delivering packages within 30 minutes of the time that they were being ordered through drones, and said that this would go from an Amazon fulfillment center to the customer's lawns, and the flying robots, which would have claws at the bottom and would operate somewhat similarly to a helicopter, although there would be, I think, 4 to 8 of the rotors on these to make them slightly more stable, would be delivering these packages. He's crazy. I mean, the man is crazy as a loon. It's amazing how sometimes in life you just get lucky. And Jeff Bezos must have fallen into just dumb luck more times than we can shake a stick. It's astonishing that someone would actually be developing a plan to do this. It is not going to happen. It is a horrible idea. Now let's talk about what happened with Jeff Bezos and then why this idea won't work, since it seems to have captured America's attention. Jeff Bezos started selling books and was an early adopter of the internet. Very bare bones presentation, and he found an area that is extraordinarily easy to fulfill. As a matter of fact, he used distributors like Baker and Taylor to do his fulfillment. Extraordinarily easy in the book industry. Nothing has to be done that's extraordinary to present a book, and you don't have to have any fulfillment capabilities, because there are a number of, and Baker and Taylor being the largest book distributors. He then, because of the fact that it was new and wonderful, this new frontier, and he, although he had no ability to articulate the future of retail, nor even understanding of retail, became a Wall Street darling, because the Wall Street has no concept of a business. Their world is all numbers. And they created an algorithm for funding and valuing internet retailers that was absurdly stupid, that made it certain that anybody with a rational business plan would never be able to prevail in the public markets, which are required if you're going to build a large retail operation. He raised the most money, befuddled the Wall Street investors, raised the most money, raised so much money, billions of dollars, that no matter what Amazon did, there was no way to fail. I mean, at that point, even interest on the money would have made the company profitable. And because they were the first, they had all of the eyes, which was really the essence of the internet. You know, for example, on this show, our listener base is mostly internet-based. You know, I was told by Scott over the last couple of days of last week that we're one of the highest online listenerships of GCN. They're third or fourth overall amongst all of their programming, and that you know, around 30,000 people each week listen to this program. But the issue with online listenership is finding the site, finding the what you're looking for. It's popularity, top of name awareness is the battle, and Amazon had it. So, lucky position. Now, here is this man saying that he's going to deliver packages via Amazon Prime Air, flying a robot that he says is going to deliver packages to customers' front lawns. Now, the FAA isn't going to allow this. They're not going to allow fully automated drones in the sky. At this point, if you're flying a drone, there has to be a pilot, and the pilot is sitting in a building somewhere flying something that looks like a video game, but there's cameras and GPS and all manner of mechanisms and control panels at the pilot's fingertips. In fact, the environment they're in is a very much like the environment in a cockpit of an airplane. It's like flying a simulator. And the people doing the flying are pilots. And that's only for government drones, which they have reluctantly allowed a few. Now we're talking about tens of thousands of non-government drones, which he wants to fly without pilots. The FAA will never allow them in the air. And they shouldn't. The potential for disaster with hitting other aircraft, bringing down other aircraft, is way too high. Moreover, the FAA has this regulation that says you can't fly within 1,000 feet of populated areas. Then I'll have to put parachutes on those packages, with that being the rule. And just imagine what you would have to have packages delivered within 30 minutes of the time that they are ordered. Let's say that the automation in the warehouse is so fast that you can get it order processed and out the door in 15 minutes. 15 minutes of flight time from a distribution center would mean that you would have to have not 5 or 10 mega warehouses around the country that are fully automated. You'd have to have in the range of 100 in the largest metropolitan areas, like the Los Angeles metropolitan area. And all of a sudden, the only advantage that you have economically as an online retailer, and that you don't have to have brick-and-mortar stores, you've completely destroyed your lone advantage. Now you have to have these extraordinarily expensive, highly automated warehouses everywhere. And you can't have them anywhere near an airport where airplanes are coming in and landing, because the FAA is never going to allow low-flying aircraft in proximity of an airport. Good luck with that. And imagine the number of drones that you would have to have. And just the questions like, how are they going to avoid other aircraft? How are they going to serve city dwellers that don't have front lawns, which are the majority of Americans? How are they going to avoid accidents against people and property when they come in to deliver the package? What happens when the weather is down? What happens when someone steals the package? What happens when the sprinklers turn on? Who's going to pull the delivery drone and its package from trees and power lines? What about the FAA regulation that requires 1,000-foot separation above populated areas? Beyond all this, the current generation of autonomous flying machines can only carry a few pounds, and they can only stay in the air for about 15 minutes. That probably is not going to work. You know, I just did the math in my head, and if you took the nation's top 50 populated areas, places like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia, Phoenix, San Antonio, San Diego, Dallas, and San Jose, which represent the 10 largest cities in America, you'd have to have 50 drones in each of them to even make a dent in the delivery capability. That's 500 drones there. The next largest cities, places like Austin, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, San Francisco, Detroit. Another 40 in each of those areas. Now you have 900 total drones. In fact, 1,500 if you deal with the nation's 50 largest cities, with the smallest of those 50 largest cities just having 10 of them. And then you wouldn't even be serving cities like Cincinnati, Orlando, St. Louis that aren't included in the nation's top 50. And we're recharging. Now you have to have 10 times that many, 15,000 of them. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. So here's a man who is supposed to be a visionary from a technological point of view. And he is now sponsoring the notion that within 5 years that drones will be delivering packages within 30 minutes to people's front lawns, completely oblivious to the fact that that would destroy his only competitive advantage, which means he doesn't have to have brick-and-mortar outlets dotting the landscape, and that the FAA and the technology would make that a lethal combination. With that many drones flying, there would be a serious Amazon-related accident involving people or property or aircraft every day. In fact, here was one of the comments on the article that I read to verify that he was indeed advocating such a thing. This person wrote, "Let me try this again. Succinctly, Jeff Bezos is a raving lunatic." We have Glenn calling in from Philadelphia. Hello, Glenn. Good morning.
Good morning, Yada. You pretty much almost stole my thunder there. I was going to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say one word. Borrow a thing from the graduate. One word: insurance, my boy. Insurance. Even a mass brokerage like Lloyd's of London isn't going to touch you with a 10-foot pole.
That is correct. When you recognize, and I love flying. I mean, I'm a pilot, and I consider myself a poor pilot. I mean, I have the highest certificate that you can have. I'm an airline transport pilot, and I have my own airplane, pilot my own airplane. But I recognize that when you're in an aircraft, there are so many things that can go wrong. And now you do this remotely where somebody is flying a drone. And now rather than flying up there in the wild blue yonder where the spaces are big, you're now putting these drones in congested areas where you have to fly them into people's yards and driveways with trees and power lines and all manner of other kinds of things without any approach plates or any guidance from the FAA. And you're going to bring these packages and drones down and in proximity with the people and their houses. I mean, he would, if he actually attempts to do this, he will bankrupt Amazon for exactly the same reason that you're saying. No one will insure it, and the liability consequences will be so great that Amazon will be bankrupt within a year of attempting the maneuver.
Yes, breaking news, listeners. A 20-car pilot just been caused on the I-5 by an Amazon drone that dropped a laptop on someone.
There you go.
Also, so one might also wonder what possible ulterior motive could they have in doing this. And so this guy, Jeff Bezos, he's captured the imagination of the general public and the users of the internet and all this.
Right.
So it, at very least, it plants the idea in the minds of the masses of drones being a nifty and cool thing. So therefore, when the government flies them over your house, don't worry, they're nifty and cool.
I think that's half of it, and that's probably the most important part of it, is that this notion that drones are now nifty and cool. After all, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, so he has become part of the conspiracy to defraud the nation. And that is a very scary thought, because the government is going to deploy drones that will be armed. They already are deploying drones that are armed, weaponized drones, and they will have tens of thousands of them in our skies. And so rather than viewing them as this hostile predator removing our freedoms, Jeff Bezos is trying to create the mythos that, oh no, they're really cute. This is, I think, what they call this the octo drone. This will be, because it's really cute the way that it flies and the way that it looks. They'll probably put little eyes on it and maybe a happy face Amazon mouth, that make it look really cute. I think that's part of it.
I have an appropriate response to that, Yahowah. I have an appropriate response. Pull.
Yeah, exactly. If you realize how many people shoot at anything that moves, and what you're talking about, you're clicking a round into a shotgun and asking the guy to release the trigger of
clay pigeon.
that flies the clay pigeon. Yeah, that's my favorite form of shooting is to do that. And I own lots of guns. I love shooting at targets. I'm not a hunter, but I just find the shooting at things fun. But can you imagine how many of these things are going to be shot out of the sky? I think, though, Glenn, it also gets back to the point that I made about people driving across the country. For people to be all a Twitter about this and to be so positive, it says that there aren't a lot of people out there like you, Glenn, that can think. We're losing the ability to process information rationally, and for people to be judgmental. And that's maybe the biggest issue of all. We'll be back in a moment. To Shattering Myths, I want to return to a topic that we were discussing here about 4 or 5 days ago. Glenn is still on the line, and Glenn has a comment on this. More than willing to entertain it. This is returning to the treaty that the United States established with Iran, which is an extraordinary thing. In the sense of, as we go through this, we're going to find that Iran gave nothing, and that the United States released some $7 billion of confiscated Iranian assets and is going to allow Iran to trade its oil freely on international markets, while Iran gives up nothing, as we'll find out in the process. But what's most extraordinary about it is that it was just a matter of months ago that had Putin not intervened and come up with a plan, America would have been engaged in war against Iran. I mean, it's just astonishing that you would form a treaty on nuclear weapons with a nation where you require nothing for them and you give them everything, and this was the nation you were going to go to war against just a matter of months ago. And you might say, wait a minute, he was not declaring war on Iran, but on Syria. Well, Syria is Iran West. And that's really all it is to it. That's the civil war in Syria is a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And it is Iran West. And yet this idiot that was going to go to war against Iran now signs a treaty with them that gives Iran everything that it needs to be able to complete its nuclear bomb. Here's the statement. First of all, it said this is just a first step, and that the duration of the first step is time-bound, being only 6 months, which means whatever Iran does after this first step, it's got all of its money, and it's not required to do anything after that. It's only renewable by mutual consent, and that it is only going to be followed up with an agreement if both sides agree on every single issue, and if every country in the world removes all nuclear sanctions against Iran, which means there is a zero possibility that it will go beyond this. Now, what is Iran giving up to have what is essentially 3 pages of sanction relief? This document, it's a kind of a one-page summary of here's the things that Iran's going to do, with most of those being pie in the sky down in the future, and then you've got the realization that it's pages of here's what the world's going to do for Iran. So the first item on the list, from existing uranium enriched to 20%, which has no purpose other than creating a nuclear bomb. And that's 90% of the energy and cost and time of fabricating fissionable material for a nuclear bomb at 20% enrichment. That it's going to take half of its working stock of 20% uranium-235 and make it a 20% oxide for fabrication for a fuel for a research reactor. Now, this research reactor, Iran, in the midst of all of its economic foibles for having decided that it wanted to create a bomb, doesn't have a research reactor that's going to do any scientific research. None. I mean, it's just, that was nothing but a smoke screen. But half of the fuel will stay at 20% fissionable, which means can be converted in a matter of weeks to a bomb. In fact, maybe even as little as 2 weeks. And the remaining 20%, they're going to dilute, they say, to a oxide that is more difficult to use in a bomb. Yeah, it's going to take an extra 2 weeks time to convert it. And Iran says that for that time it will not enrich uranium over 5%, which is what most of its centrifuges are doing. And Iran announces that it will not make any further advances of its activities at Nance Fuel Enrichment Plant, Fordar, or the Arak reactor. Now, the Nance and Arak sites, as well as Fordar, are all military sites. They are all designed specifically for the creation of a bomb. And this doesn't say that they will be dismantled. It doesn't even say that construction will be stopped. All it says is they won't make further advances. You can make an advance. You can continue whatever you were doing so long as it's not additional to what you were already doing. But they were already doing everything that they needed to do to make a bomb. Now, as it relates to the change of some of this 20% fissionable fuel, Iran has confirmed. I'm going to read something to you, and you're going to say, well, this is Iran confirming that they're agreeing and abiding by this treaty. And then I'll tell you the date of this article. Iran has confirmed it has resumed the conversion of medium-enriched uranium, that's the 20%, into oxide fuel, slowing down the growth of its stockpile and creating more time for talks on its nuclear program. The significance of the move is that since Iran started making 20% enriched uranium in 2010, international concern has focused on the reality that they were making a nuclear bomb. Uranium enriched to 20% is much easier to turn into weapons grade, which is 90% enriched, but don't be fooled by the 20 to 90% variable. 90% of what is required to make fissionable material for a bomb is accomplished with 20% enriched uranium. It's only 3.5%, I'll continue with this article, rather than 3.5% enriched fuel that Iran would be using if it wanted to make fuel for its power plant. Now, let me give you the date of this article. It was not December 1st or November 25th of 2013. It wasn't Iran saying, yep, we signed this agreement, we're going to do that. No, this article announcement was dated February 13th. In other words, the only thing that had any viability, any constraint on Iran in this entire document was the conversion of 50% of its 20% stockpile into a oxide fuel. And they made a commitment and began doing that in earnest and had already done so as of February, which means every aspect of what the Obama administration has marketed as beneficial is a lie. It's stunning when you think of it. And by the way, the length of time to move from this fuel being converted to the oxide to a nuclear fissionable weapon is a matter of weeks, somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks. It's not a significant constraint. As it relates to the 5% fuel they can continue to make for their lone electricity generating reactor, oh, by the way, they have absolutely no incentive to make fuel for it. There's no reason for them to be making the 5%, and actually it's 3.5% enriched fuel for their reactor. Why? Because it was all supplied by the Russians. All of the fuel for that reactor, all of the rods, have been supplied by the Russians. And the Russians have an agreement to continue to supply them. And the Russians have to supply it because it's a very specific type of uranium and fissionable material that is designed to run in the nuclear reactor that they completed. They have no purpose of any enrichment. And 20% fissional purity cannot be used in a nuclear reactor. Now, at the time of the last IAEA report, Iran had produced almost 233 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium and had diverted only around 100 kilograms towards making uranium oxide fuel. Now, guess what? Around 100 as a percentage of 233 is the same percentage that showed up in the agreement. In other words, as of February of this year, they had already accomplished the only concession on the list that was meaningful, which means everything Obama has presented as being an agreement that delays and constrains Iran from developing its bomb is completely and utterly meaningless. All that we're doing is enriching the nation that will soon have a nuclear weapon, and now we'll have it sooner because the handcuffs financially have been removed. Iran, by the way, does have an almost complete nuclear fuel cycle. The infrastructure to manage the entire process from digging uranium out of the ground to generating power with it. That includes uranium mines and processing plants for turning ore into yellowcake and then at yellow cake into uranium hexafluoride, a gas that can be enriched with the use of centrifuges, of which they have about 16,000. Of course, this agreement said that they would only keep 10,000 of those centrifuges operating. Well, guess what? They had already laid off 6,000 of them because they were no longer efficient. There's something about the Israelis coming up with a matter of technology magic to make them overspeed. And so even in this, they had long since taken those offline. Now, Iran does have two reactors, the first of which is the nuclear power station at Bashur on the Gulf Coast. The United States gave it to them. The French then, when the United States said, I'm not so sure this is much fun dealing with you guys anymore, when they had our hostages, the French continued to work on it, and then even the French gave up on them, and the Russians came in to complete that power plant. And then it uses, by the way, exclusively Russian-supplied fuel rods. And then they have this, we'll put in air quotes, research reactor in Tehran. The research reactor is in Tehran, recognizing that the world knows that it isn't for research. The Iranians aren't doing any medical research. In fact, there isn't any medical research that is being done in any Islamic country, much less in Iran. And they said, it uses 20% enriched uranium fuel for medical, agricultural, and scientific uses. And if you believe that, then you might as well order your next product from Amazon and expect the drone to deliver it to your front lawn. The reality is that Iran even has now a heavy water, a deuterium oxide plant in Iraq that has absolutely no function whatsoever other than to build a bomb. And guess where Iran is going to deploy them when they have them? We'll return to Shattering Myths after the commercial break. To Shattering Myths. Yes, the conclusion by those who are advocates of this deal that was struck with the Iranians, about which the vast majority of the articles release Iran from any international sanctions, say that, if Iran complies with everything that they have said they were going to do, that it would take them 2 or 3 months to make a nuclear bomb. Oh boy, that's so reassuring, don't you think? Glenn, you've been listening. What in the world would cause anyone to ink this kind of a deal with Iran and think that they were doing something beneficial?
Oh, not that they don't. These are malevolent people who don't want to do anything beneficial. But the motivation is just. So there's so many motivations, because the foundation, chaotician, think tank gamers must be having a field day with this, because it serves multiple nefarious purposes simultaneously. Okay? First of all, the U.S. can beg to justify its actions on the premises of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, of which Iran is the signatory, and is therefore entitled to assistance from member nations in the development of peaceful nuclear programs. So they have that covered to justify it. They can satisfy the UN as the wanting to act as a peacemaker and a policeman. It gives the U.S. plausible deniability, since Russia said niet to a Syrian invasion attack. It gives U.S. plausible deniability of stepping back to be a peacemaker in the region rather than a war maker. It heightens Sunni Shiite tensions. It's sort of forcing collaboration between the Israelis and the Saudis and possibly would give and they might be adamant about attacking Iran.
Glenn, it actually puts the Saudis on the side of the Israelis. The Israelis and Saudis agree exactly on this, and in the U.S. is on the side against Saudi Arabia and against
that's what I'm saying.
Israel.
They're collaborating. Yeah, and I mean, they're so
astonishing.
And the Saudis are adamant about this, but it might be, and if they decide to collaborate, or one of them decides to unilaterally attack, it might be what the U.S. actually wants, but this whole overture gives them plausible deniability of not being involved.
And guess what country is by far the largest purchaser of American weaponry?
Saudi Arabia?
You betcha, Saudi Arabia. The last agreement that Saudi Arabia signed was $75 billion on just one agreement. Yeah, they are by far the largest purchaser of American weaponry, and we put them in a position where they either use that weaponry to defend themselves against the increased power of Iran and Iran developing a nuclear bomb, or they end up out of power because they're at war with the Iranians.
Well, we've been hearing about these, a bomb in weeks or months things since the mid-'80s, these stories. But we also have the question of delivery systems, as we mentioned previously. And, but if we want to heighten tensions in the region, boy, this is a great way to do it.
Well, in terms of delivery systems, the Iranians do make rockets. Their rockets are not particularly sophisticated, but the Russians and the North Koreans have provided what they needed, even the Chinese, to have much more sophisticated intercontinental ballistic missiles at this point. They have missiles now that are capable of reaching throughout Europe, and will fairly soon have a missile capable of reaching the United States. But my view has always been that that's not what the Iranians are going to do, because the big technology gap is really miniaturizing a nuclear warhead so that it will work on a ballistic missile. Making a large nuclear bomb the technology for that exists, and it's available on the internet. It's not difficult to do that, so long as you're willing to use a suicide bomber and sail your bomb into the harbor of a large city like New York Harbor, for example. Very easy to destroy a city like New York using a very unsophisticated delivery device like a sailboat. And so that's always been what I thought they were going to do, and I still think it's what they're going to do. I actually do not think that Israel has the greatest concern, because I don't think that Iran is going to use its nukes in Israel. I think they're going to also have plausible deniability, and they're going to use them in America's largest cities, and not by an intercontinental ballistic missile. So I think that's where all this is headed. Very, very, very scary. And for that, the United States and Europe suspended all sanctions on Iran's petrochemical exports, as well as all associated financial services. And so we gave away everything and got absolutely nothing in return.